So, let's talk about one of the biggest, most fascinating paradoxes in all of music history. We're going to get into a band that basically threw out the rulebook, did everything the quote unquote wrong way, and somehow became one of the most successful and beloved cultural forces of all time. Of course, I'm talking about the Grateful Dead. Right, let's just get straight to it, because this is the big question. How in the world does a band that almost never got played on the radio become this massive global phenomenon that spans generations? The answer? Well, it has almost nothing to do with what you heard on the radio, and everything to do with what they built outside of it. One. Just one. That's it. That's the number of times the Grateful Dead ever had a song in the Billboard Top 40. And get this, that song, Touch of Grey, didn't even happen until 1987. They were already more than 20 years into their career. I mean, by any normal standard, this whole thing it shouldn't have worked. And this quote, man, it just nails it. To really get what happened here, you have to completely ditch the idea of a band as just some people who make albums. The Grateful Dead were something else entirely. They were architects of a traveling community, a whole cultural experience, and a sound that was never, ever the same twice. Okay, so here's the first huge piece of the puzzle. For the Dead, the album was never the point. It was never the main event. The studio was fine for sketching out some ideas, but the real art, the actual product, that happened live, on stage night after night. And this really breaks it down. Think about most concerts you go to, right? You're there to hear the songs you love from the album played just like the album. A Dead show was the polar opposite. It wasn't about replication, it was about creation. Every single night was a one-of-a-kind event. The band and the audience, they were all going on a journey together, and seriously, no one, not even the guys on stage, knew exactly where it was going to end up. Now, that whole journey was powered by improvisation. But we're not just talking about a 5-minute guitar solo. No way. This was a deep, complex, real-time musical conversation happening between everyone in the band. You'd have the bass player suggest a new idea. The drummers would pick up on it and shift the entire rhythm, and the guitars would weave in and out. It was like they were reading each other's minds, musically. And the language they used for that conversation? It came from this incredible stew of American music. You had Jerry Garcia, who came from bluegrass and folk. You had Pigpen, who was all about that raw, gut-bucket blues. And then you had Phil Lesh, who was trained in classical music and avant-garde jazz. They literally took the entire American songbook, threw it in a blender, and created a sound that was just theirs. They were so obsessed with making that live conversation perfect that they actually invented their own technology to do it. The wall of sound. It wasn't about being the loudest band in the world. It was about being the clearest. Putting all those speakers behind them meant they didn't need stage monitors. They could hear every single nuance from each other with crystal clarity. It was an insane, unbelievably expensive, and totally brilliant solution to a problem that pretty much only they cared about solving. But, the music was really only half the story. The other, equally important half was the incredible community they didn't just have, but that they actively built with their audience. The fans became just as much a part of the whole phenomenon as the band itself. They were called Deadheads, and this was not your typical fan base. These folks weren't just passive consumers, buying tickets and t-shirts. They were active participants. They were collaborators. They saw themselves as helping create the vibe every night, and they became the keepers of the flame, the archivists of the band's entire live history. And the band poured gasoline on this fire by doing something absolutely radical for the time. They told the fans, go ahead, record our shows. I mean, think about that. In an industry completely obsessed with copyright and control, the Dead just gave their most valuable asset, their live music, away for free. And this one move created this huge grassroots network of tape trading that spread their music like a virus, one cassette at a time, decades before the internet. This really gets to the core of how they saw things. They knew that what happened on stage each night was like lightning in a bottle. It was a unique, fleeting moment. Letting people record it and share it wasn't losing a product, it was extending the life of a gift. It was a radical act of trust, and it created this unbreakable bond with their audience. So now you have this massive traveling community, and they needed a place to gather. That place became the parking lot. Shakedown Street, named after one of their songs, was this amazing temporary city that would just pop up before every single show. It was the living, breathing heart of the entire Grateful Dead tour. It was so much more than just a place to hang out. Shakedown was the town square where you met up with friends and traded those tapes. It was this incredible, fan-driven economy where you could sell veggie burritos or tie-dye shirts to get enough gas money to make it to the next show. It was the physical manifestation of everything the community was about: creativity, self-reliance, and just sharing in the experience. So, what's the long-term legacy of this totally unconventional way of doing things? Well, even after the band officially stopped touring in 1995, after Jerry Garcia passed away, their influence didn't just fade away. In fact, you could argue it's only gotten stronger. What they left behind is basically a blueprint for a different way to be a band. They essentially created the entire jam band genre as we know it. They completely rewrote the rules on how artists and fans can connect with each other. And they gave generations of other musicians a perfect model for how to build a loyal, grassroots community from the ground up. And, eventually, the mainstream world had to take notice. When they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or when they got a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. It was the establishment finally admitting that this weird, wonderful, roundabout path they took had a massive and undeniable impact on music and culture. And, true to form, the music itself never really stopped. The surviving members are still out there touring, in different groups, like Dead and Company with John Mayer, selling out football stadiums and bringing that same spirit of discovery and improvisation to a whole new generation of fans. The conversation is still going. So we'll end with this. In our world today, which is so hyper-focused on ownership, on intellectual property, on monetizing every little thing, what can we learn from the Grateful Dead? They built one of the most successful and long-lasting empires in music history based on the exact opposite principles: on generosity, on community, and on the simple idea that the best things in life are meant to be shared. It's a pretty radical idea, and maybe one we need now more than ever.